Welcome to People Who Plan. I'm Jeremy Pomp alongside my co-host Michael Rossiter. Every now and then we get to do an episode that's less of an interview and more of a reunion. Today's one of those. Our guest is Billy Blaustein, co-founder and COO of Vammo, Latin America's largest electric motorcycle and battery swapping platform out of São Paulo, Brazil. Before Vammo, Billy, Michael, and I were in the trenches together at Tesla during the Model 3 years. Since then, he's built something genuinely wild, a fleet of 5,000 electric motorcycles, north of a million battery swaps, powering the riders you order your food from, like Uber and others. They just closed a $45 million Series B, and they're building their own manufacturing in Brazil. What I love about Billy's story is that it's an operations first story. He's got a real thesis that the world keeps reading global electrification through a Tesla shaped lens, when the actual next wave is two wheels in the global south, built on supply chains the West isn't paying attention to. And he's not arguing it from a slide deck. He's arguing it from the swap stations, the inventory, the lead times, the stuff that actually has to work at 6 in the morning when a rider needs a charged battery. So we're going to get into all of that, from Tesla to two wheels to scaling on the ground in Brazil, and how a guy from California ends up betting his career on Sao Paulo's delivery economy. Billy, welcome to People Who Plan.
Jeremy,
How's
awesome
that
to be
intro?
here. Could you come to my 50th birthday and introduce me to everyone I've ever known? Good to see you, Michael.
Hey, Billy.
Congrats on all you
Um,
guys are building, man. Love following along.
Thank you. You too. Do you know the first time I saw you, we were at first day of orientation. We were sitting in some big conference room at Haas, and you were like 2 or 3 rows in front of me, just being like your normal, charismatic, but just like very strong presence. I was like, all right, that's like a cool guy that I should probably get to know.
Appreciate you not saying that I sounded like an arrogant, egotistical maniac or something.
No, you tread
Appreciate
that
the
line
admiration.
very, very, very beautifully.
Yeah, Michael and I went to Berkeley Haas together and are still in a few WhatsApp groups with a collection of friends from around the world today. So it's nice to stay in touch.
Billy, how does a guy from Northern California end up trading in his Patagonia vest for some flip-flops down in Brazil? Walk me through that.
So I think just for the context, I'm from Northern California, but I grew up very exposed to immigration and Latin American culture. My mother flipped homes for a living, and we always hired Mexicans, Guatemalans, El Salvadorans who were undocumented, who left their families behind to come and work in San Rafael, California, make money and send it home. And I was always intrigued by why 10 guys would live in an apartment together, why they had to do this. And my mom always had a very, open heart to them, and we invited them over for Thanksgiving. We would go to their house. And so I kind of developed this interest in understanding what was going on, which led to an interest in economic development and creating jobs in Latin America and creating jobs for the people that were leaving their homes and their families because there were no jobs there for them. So I studied economic development in Latin America in college, ended up spending a lot of time in the region, study abroad. I started a nonprofit in Honduras in college and ended up going to Mexico on a Rotary scholarship after undergrad and then working in Mexico at the Boston Consulting Group, where just my kind of passion for the region flourished and, became fluent in the languages, got to know the people, got embraced by the culture. Since really a young age of kind of early exposure, I've continued to spend more and more of my life in Latin America and just feel increasingly comfortable with the region, with the language, with the people. And I would tell you guys today that I feel just as comfortable in Mexico, Colombia, Chile, Brazil, El Salvador as I would in Northern California. Building a business in Brazil or in Latam just felt like a natural trajectory for me. And today I get to be building a company in Brazil, creating jobs, which is what I wanted to do when I was 17 years old. So it feels very kind of fulfilling to be at this place today at 39 years old.
So did it feel more like a progression towards that when you actually made that decision? Or was it a big leap for you to do it? And what about the language and the culture? Because you're in Brazil, but in Brazil, they speak Portuguese, which is different from the rest of South America. So walk me through that.
I would say it was an ongoing evolution, Jeremy. Like I'd spent time in college abroad. I then went down there in my early 20s. I came back to go to business school in the United States and ended up working in the United States for a while, including at Tesla with you guys. But when I joined Tesla, like I joined Tesla stating to myself that I want to go to Latin America with Tesla. And I remember interviewing with Troy and saying I want to be involved with Tesla Mexico. Little did I know that in 2017, Tesla Mexico was selling like 6 cars a month. So the market was just nothing. I think today, 9 years later, Tesla's in Mexico and Chile. So they've penetrated a little bit into the region. But the goal was to come back to the region. I ended up marrying a woman from El Salvador and getting married in El Salvador. And the evolution of kind of starting a business in this region, I felt like was kind of always written on the wall. Like it was going to happen. It was about finding the right partner, finding the right idea. And why Brazil? Brazil is a massive market. It is the largest market by far in LATAM. 2/3 of venture capital funding goes to Brazil and Latin America. 1/3 goes to Spanish-speaking LATAM. The Sao Paulo metropolitan market is massive. It's the largest urban market in the Americas. We're doing a business in climate, in decarbonization. Brazil's electrical grid is 90% renewable. It's the cleanest of all the G20 countries. And so if you say, hey, like, where can we go have a disproportionate impact in terms of electrifying the fleet? Brazil stands out as a really prime candidate for that. And the language, I think anyone would tell you, you just got to roll up your sleeves and jump into it and learn. And I've been here now for 4 years this time and almost a year in a previous chapter of life. So it's been almost 5 years learning Portuguese. And so it feels just as natural as English almost today.
How do you learn new languages? I don't understand. Why, like any practical advice for someone who has took 8 years of Spanish through middle school, high school, and college and never figured it out? Like,
Man,
I'm sort of asking a joking question, but I actually think it's an unbelievable life skill that I just would love to understand. Is there some magic to it? Or is it just like you have the aptitude for it?
I think you got to be hungry to do it. Some people see learning language as a chore, and some people get functionally curious around it. I get really curious. You feel when you become to learn another language, you feel like your personality changes. You feel like you have a different personality in that language, which is quite unique. And look, you need to be vulnerable. When you're in the beginning, you're gonna make a ton of mistakes. And it's a cool part of that's similar to being an entrepreneur is you're gonna go out there and make a million mistakes. You're gonna look like an idiot. You got to be okay to look like an idiot. You got to laugh at yourself. And that's the early stages of someone, let's say someone that doesn't really speak a language and you're just learning in the United States and you're learning online, you're going to make a million mistakes. You got to work daily at it. Recently, I learned French because I lived in France with Tesla for 4 years. And I was just disciplined. Every day I did 30 minutes of French, every single day. And I did online with a tutor who was French. And so I paid him online. I paid him €4 for 30 minutes a day. And it was like the act of just talking to someone. But my French was terrible when I got there. And I didn't work in French. But that helped. But if you really want to learn language in the United States, it's got to be daily. It's got to be daily. You're going to make a ton of mistakes. And then obviously going and living in the place is obviously the best thing you can do. But yeah, you got to be vulnerable and you got to put in the time, man. It's like the definition of compounding. You just got to put in the time and keep chipping away at it.
There's a lot of people who have a business idea and then they get really excited about it. There's a lot of people who have a fantasy of going on vacation or moving to another country and they'll like download Duolingo and use it for 5 minutes. The vulnerability is, I think you've nailed it. You're gonna be embarrassed and feel embarrassed. Or maybe you're not. And like the mature version of that is just accepting that you're going to make mistakes and like owning that, right? But that must,
No,
yeah.
it's fair, man. And just one parallel is like when you're learning a language, everyone talks about you get to these tabletops where like you'll be making progress in a language and then you'll spend 3 months and you can't translate verbs for the hell of you. And you just feel like you're going in circles. And all of a sudden you break through and you start climbing again. Obviously, entrepreneurship can feel that way as well. Hopefully, the benefit of learning language is at least you're making progress and you're getting somewhere, whereas entrepreneurship can be frustrating and challenging and you go in circles for a long time. But yeah, vulnerability is key and pushing forward is key. Resilience, tenacity, all that. Yeah, man.
I agree with that, Michael. Billy has this trait where he's not afraid. I have a friend who was an actor, but not shy about putting himself in situations where he's going to fail or could fail because he's not afraid of it. He's been denied roles over and over and over and over again. And he can just take the hits and keep going. Billy, you have that same fearlessness in you where you're just like, I'm just going for it. I'll mess up. It's okay. Like, but I'm going to get better. Tomorrow I'll be better. The day after that I'll be better. And the day after that I'll be even better. That's who you are.
I appreciate you saying this, man, and just bringing it back to Tess a little bit in our time together. One of the times when I actually recognized that was fall Q3, 2018 with you guys during Model 3 scaling, where it was brutal. It was a stressful freaking time for everyone, from assembly hell to production hell to then Q3 scaling hell. And I had a cold sore on my lip for 4 months. It was the most stressful time of my life. It was just like you always feel like you were scared to go into work some days because you didn't know who was going to get fired or who was going to leave or what was going to happen. And I remember that I was launching this Tesla Dark program with you, Jeremy, and I would just keep being like, all right, just keep marching forward. Just keep sending these email updates about how we're growing the program. Just keep the communication going. Keep saying, this is what we're working on. This is the blockers that we have. And just keep pushing forward. Just keep banging the drum. And you feel like you're in trenches on the Western Front in 1917, man. And every day it's a grudge fest and you're doing fist to fist combat every single day. You got to just keep going forward and you got to stay optimistic. And I think for some people got blown up at Tesla. There were some landmines out there, but I think without that resilience and that pushing forward, my career would have been very different today. And I don't know where I'd be today. And so I think I learned some things in that period with you guys that perhaps I've continued to cherish going forward, or at least value as elements that are key in business and life.
Let's talk about then this transition to Brazil. What is the origin story of Vammo?
Yeah. And I'll give you the origin story and kind of the thesis of the business of what we're doing today. So I was at Tesla in Europe. I was the general manager of the used car program. So I led the P&L for our used car remarketing business, vehicle trade-in, lease returns, all of our internal fleet refurbishment across 22 countries in Tesla. It's a very complicated business and always felt under-resourced. But I'd learned a lot there and I was really enjoying it. But after 5 years at Tesla, I was thinking about what was next. I had expressed to multiple friends that I wanted to get back to Latin America. I wanted to work in mobility and I wanted to work in electrification. I believe a lot in Paulo Coelho, The Alchemist, talk about where you want to get to and destiny will make it happen. And so a business school friend, Eric Miller, who Michael knows, knew that I wanted to get back to the region. And one of Eric's good friends was in Colombia working at a company called Rappi, which is one of the largest food delivery companies in LATAM. It's a unicorn company backed by A16Z. And he was very senior there. He reported into the CEO. He had been there for 6 years, really smart guy named Jack, who had been a BCG guy, had been a Wharton guy, and was very senior and growing rapidly across LATAM. And so Eric connected us and said, hey, you guys should know each other. You're at Tesla, you're into electrification, you speak the languages, you want to get back to the region. Here's Jack. He has this idea for electrifying two-wheelers. Because in Latin America, most food delivery, like most DoorDash and Uber Eats, happens on a two-wheeler, primarily a motorcycle. So food delivery is massive in the region. And Jack had seen this growth across Latin America from his time at Rappi. And I didn't share this, but I had launched Uber in Brazil and in Mexico in 2013, 2014. So I knew the mindset of the Uber delivery guy or the driver. I knew the region, I knew the languages. And he started saying, hey, man, I have this idea for electrification of motorcycles. It's based on battery swapping. And I'd heard of this company called GoGuru in Taiwan, which does battery swapping for two-wheelers, but it's a very unique use case for the Taiwanese market, which didn't feel like a very exportable business, what they had. And so the fundamental question was where did battery swapping come from? Electric can be cheaper. It has a higher upfront CapEx, but the OpEx can be significantly lower, especially for high mileage users. And as you guys know, we saw this at Tesla and we see this in the electric vehicle world, which is the cost of a kilowatt hour is significantly lower than the cost of gasoline. And your preventative maintenance can be cheaper as well. Corrective might be more expensive, but let's focus on preventative, right? Preventative can be significantly cheaper. And if that's the case, why are delivery guys, why are they not adopting electric? Why are they not going to electric two-wheelers? And if you look at LATAM, when we did, there's literally zero penetration of electric two-wheelers. Like Colombia will sell 1 million motorcycles and 1,000 are electric. So it's just like a drop in the bucket. It barely exists. And that's been trending year on year while motorcycle sales have grown in the countries in the region, Mexico, Brazil, electric motorcycles are flat. So their penetration is reducing. At the same time, you look at car penetration, BYD is booming in Brazil and Latin America. Great Wall Motors, the Chinese electric vehicle companies are coming in with force. Last year in Brazil, 15% of new car sales were EVs, 15%. That dwarfs the United States. 2 years ago, it was 3%. It's growing like crazy. And so electric motorcycles are stuck way behind. Basically, we looked at it and we said, what's the problem? What's going on? And we identified 3 barriers. The first barrier is that the vehicles that were being brought to market were dingy, cheap, crummy little electric two-wheelers made for streets in Europe and China, but not made for the realities of the Latin American road, similar to the Ethiopian roads that I know you've seen, Jeremy.
Yep.
So the vehicles just get destroyed. Second was the batteries didn't have enough range in them. So even if you had a vehicle that was powerful enough and good enough, you'd have about 80 miles of range on the 2 batteries that you put in the bike. Most of the bikes take 2 batteries. The guys that drive about 130 miles a day. So you're going to have 80 miles of range. You got to drive 130 a day. So you can't do your day. What you're going to do is you're going to drive around, Then you're gonna have to find a place to pull over, to plug in. You're gonna have to steal electricity from someone, and you gotta sit there for 3 hours while you charge the batteries. You can't be making deliveries when you're charging batteries. So even if you had the battery, the vehicle, and then even if you had the charging, maybe you had plugs or the batteries were off, then you'd have to finance the vehicle. And the problem is the moto boys, the delivery guys, they're called moto boys in Brazil. Literally, Brazilian Portuguese, you call a delivery guy a moto boy.
Love
The
that.
moto boys, they're not going to get approved for financing for a gasoline motorcycle. How are they going to get approved for an electric motorcycle, which costs 2x as much? So they have to get approved for a much higher line of credit. And the bank would have to say, I'm going to finance an electric motorcycle. The bank has never seen an electric motorcycle in their life. There's no residual value on that thing. And so the bank's going to say, okay, this thing can't be financed. So those are the three big barriers: was lack of financing, lack of range, and lack of adequate vehicles. And Vammo set out to fix that and build that. And so we basically customized the best vehicle we could find and made it proprietary. And it's called in Brazilian Portuguese, tropicalizar, to tropicalize. We tropicalized the motorcycle. We built a battery swap infrastructure. Basically, we have the largest charging infra in Latin America. It's basically our Tesla superchargers. We have 700 points around the city where you can swap a battery. Yesterday, we did 30,000 battery swaps. 30,000 battery swaps yesterday across
Wow.
700 battery points. And then lastly, we do business model innovation. And so to get over the financing battle, we do leasing. And so we buy the vehicles and the batteries, we put them on our balance sheet, we raise asset-backed debt against them, and then we lease them out to the customers. The customers sign a 1-year contract with us. And these guys are saving 30 to 40% versus a gasoline alternative. And so the business is booming. We bring vehicles to market and they all get rented out. And so, yeah, today we're like the distant number one electric motorcycle company in the region, and things are going well. And just for context, like the Sao Paulo motorcycle market is as big as the entire United States motorcycle market. So the city sells as many motorcycles as the country of the United States in a year. So the market's very, very big in Sao Paulo, and we're just at the tip of the iceberg right now.
It's so fun to get to hear this and amazing success and the clinical way you broke down the problem and then solved it, and then this massive payoff. There is some Tesla kind of DNA and working from the first principles and then working it through end to end like that.
I would say there's definitely some first principles. A lot of it came from partnership with Jack. But we spent a lot of time sparring ideas and talking about it. But when we first connected, he knew that it would be battery swapping. And I was passionate about electrification in Latin America, and I'd heard of Goguro, but I'd never put the two together. And fortunately, we make a very good partnership today. And so I think you guys have seen this as well, speaking with a lot of entrepreneurs, but having a partner to go into the battle with, a lot of the stuff gets hard. A lot of the conversations get challenging. A lot of stuff gets super stressful. And I think it's very helpful to have someone to talk through the nightmares with when that stuff arises.
Yeah, ideally only one person is on the ledge at a time. The other one can be talking them off the ledge at that moment.
Amen. Ideally, one's pulling the other one on the rope when the other one falls.
Like clearly, you guys have done several rounds of financing. You've raised a bunch. You have had all this success in market, like you're describing. What were like? Can you think back? What were there moments of this was the crux, or this was the decision we made, or the challenge we had to work through on that journey? Were there phases of them?
There was a clear seed, Series A, Series B stage, a seed stage around, can this model work? Could this thing actually grow into something special? And we had some seed investors that allowed us to test about 200 vehicles in market, to set up some physical battery swapping. We literally rented out storefronts and put batteries on shelves and had guys with plugs plugging them in for we had 200 bikes, but like 20 different models. So we had 10 of 20 different models because we were testing out all these bikes. So all the batteries were different. All the plugs were different. It was kind of crazy. But we said, hey, we can make this business work. We can actually make this business work. So that was seed. Then we went to Series A and we scaled up to 4,000 bikes or so. And we said, we can get to gross margins that make this business attractive, that can generate an attractive payback profile to give us an IRR and a ROIC that makes investors excited about this business. We're right now in the Series B, which is we can operationally scale. We can continue to push down costs in terms of gross margins and CapEx to make better return profile and actually manage the operational complexity of the business. And the business is operationally complex, but it's also a massive moat. It's going to be really hard for someone else to figure out how to do what we're doing. And I think we're getting extremely good at it. The team's excellent. We're a super AI native company today. We're heavily leveraging the tools that are out there to automate, to flag everything possible and under the sun, ranging from battery states of health to parts stock on shelves to customer acquisition channels to, we could go down the whole list. There's a lot of operations conversation we could have, maybe at another session as we're getting tight on time.
I feel like you've taken me right there onto the streets with you, like seeing this happen. It's so
You'd
vivid.
love it here, man. You'd live it
I
on the
totally
streets.
would. I totally would. Talk to me about the challenges you're facing right now because of your growth.
I just got back from Manaus. I was in Manaus yesterday and on Wednesday, which is the city in the Amazon Free Trade Zone. That's where we assemble our motorcycles. We were just at our factory up there. And so, guys, our supply chain is complex. Most of our parts, most of everything comes from China and the electric two-wheel world. If you look at a map, shipping from China to Brazil, it's the furthest you can get geographically from China. And so you either go all the way through the Suez Canal, through the Mediterranean, or you go down around the Cape, or you go through the Panama Canal, or you go down around southern South America. And so you got to pay your supplier, then they ship it, then it gets to you. Then you got to go up the Amazon River to assemble the motorcycle, then down the Amazon River. And this is because it's a free trade zone. And you bring it into market. So there's your whole supply chain. There's the working capital associated with your supply chain. And that's just for your bike and your batteries. We haven't even talked about the part supply that you need to keep your fleet alive. And parts supply, guys, we could talk about part supply for a long time, like days on hand, inventory that you need, and you have 200 parts in your motorcycle BOM. You have all these different use cases of your couriers and how they're driving. And then some months in Sao Paulo get really wet. And so some parts have water ingress problems, and then they get wet, and then the other parts break. And so you shoot up your consumption of some parts some other months. And then your team launches something to train your drivers on how they shouldn't do something. And so all of a sudden you're overstocked on a part that you all of a sudden were consuming like crazy, but now it doesn't get consumed anymore. And so it's a major learning lesson. We've built a very advanced Python tool, which is now Claude is basically building it with us. We're in a much more comfortable position. I still want to double click with you again, Jeremy, and pull back the covers and see what we can do together.
Yeah, we're going to do that. Don't worry.
Yeah, but no, so like we have a very big supply chain business.
And then a follow up on that is where are you going next? What's on the horizon for Vammo? I'd love to hear about that.
So today, the Brazilian government, Lula, announced a massive program to subsidize the purchase of motorcycles, gasoline, and electric for motoboys, and the financing of charging infrastructure in Brazil. It was literally just announced 2 hours ago. We do subscription. We don't sell the vehicles today, but all of a sudden there's subsidized lines of financing and we could sell a whole bunch of motorcycles and benefit from these heavily subsidized lines of infra financing, which are being provided by the Brazilian Development Bank. That kind of changes things. But what I would tell you is we're growing, man. We're growing. Every time we bring vehicles in the market, they get rented. Today, we're just really in Sao Paulo, greater Sao Paulo. And so the ambitions are continuing to grow, continuing to scale, continuing to electrify Brazil and Latin America's motorcycle fleet. I hope we can do something like what Tesla did and many kind of car four-wheel companies did, where they just made a dent into the market, like really penetrated the market. And all of a sudden you look at the statistics and Brazil goes from 0.3% electric motorcycle sales to 13% electric motorcycle sales. And I think we're the one carrying the torch forward on that.
Really no one better to lead the charge. There's so much to go do.
It's great to chat with you and Michael. I respect you guys so much. Jeremy, I've learned an amazing amount from you. I think I try and emulate a lot of how you are as a leader and how I operate today in terms of your humility, your empathy. I need to tell myself, and I think I told you this before, I need to tell myself to be more like you when I walk into the office sometimes, where I slow down and look everyone in the eyes, ask them about themselves, their weekend, their family. I think it's an incredibly important moment, and it cultivates trust and it cultivates a strong teamwork environment where people can trust each other and be vulnerable with each other. And I think those are incredibly powerful lessons that I learned from you. So thank you.
Look, you've taught me it's okay to be vulnerable. You've taught me it's okay to have a misstep or two. You've taught me you can put your ego aside, and you've taught me you can just go for it and do things. When I think about what you're doing down there, it brings a smile to my face. We've got a cohort of friends that we still connect with from our Tesla days. And you're one of them that went out and just followed your dreams. You always wanted to work in Latin America, and you always wanted to have a business that was your own, that you were building, and you've always been this entrepreneur. And seeing you do it just gives me goosebumps and brings a smile on my face, man. I'm rooting you on every day.
Appreciate
from up here and wishing you the most success.
Thanks, man. I can't wait to get you down here, get your butt on a motorcycle.
I know it. I know it.
Crush it, man.
It very well could happen this summer. So let's see.
The doors are open, man.
Billy, thank you so much for coming on the pod. I know your schedule is packed. I'm going to let you go, but thanks for sticking with me. This has been a great recording, and I can't wait to publish it.
Got it, man. Cool. Awesome, Jeremy. Big hug, brother.
All right.
Cheers.
Bye-bye.